We've just had a brilliant season of MotoGP racing, but there's a big hole in it that used to be filled by Suzuki. So I wanted to make this video to try and convince the factory to come back to racing. And let's be frank, for a lot of us, Suzuki motorcycles are more than just cold pieces of metal and plastic engineered together. They represent joy in its rawest, most emotional form. Suzuki might make more money selling little cars in India, which is what they seem to be focused on these days, but that is as boring as... So why do we care? Seeing your favourite motorcycle racing brand go down the Kazi is like watching your soccer team get relegated. I love Suzukis. This was my first bike. K7 Gix 1000 was my favourite bike ever. It was brilliant. Rode it across Europe and even went around the old Nürburgring on it. What about you? What was your favourite Suzuki? You must have one. Please put it in the comments. And while you're at it, like and subscribe. This is the factory that bought us cutting-edge bikes like the 1971 GT 750 two-stroke, and in 1976-77, they had the best four-strokes of the era, like the GS 750 and the 1000E. A long line of screaming air-cooled two-strokes like the first 100 miles an hour 250, the X7, which was every learner's dream, and that evolved into the iconic RGV 250. And the most charismatic motorbike racer of all time was Barry Sheene, who after winning his 2 Grand Prix titles on the RG500 became synonymous with the brand. You know, you couldn't get any cooler than that. And what about the maddest looking bike of the early 80s, the Katana, which was named after the Japanese samurai sword? And then in 1985, Gixxer 750, which was ridden just 1 year later at the Transatlantic Challenge in the UK by the most exciting racer of the era, Kevin Schwantz. But the motorcycling gods aligned when they paired him with the Suzuki's RGV 500 in Grand Prix. And I tell you, it was the glory days at Suzuki back then. Imagine wanting the best bike of 1985. You'd walk into a Suzuki dealer and the salesman says to you, "Well, sir, we've got here the Gixxer 750 or the RG500. And success continued on the track when Kevin won the world title in 1993. And then just when you thought Suzuki were resting on their laurels, in 1999... they introduced the 1300cc Hayabusa with a stonking 173 horsepower, which allowed that long-range missile to outgun all their rivals. And then in 2000, Kenny Roberts Jr. won them another 500cc world title. And get this, between 1999 and 2009, Suzuki won 10 Moto America titles with the Gixxer in the hands of Matt Mladin and Ben Spies. By the early 2000s, the Gixxers had become a global success, but other manufacturers had obviously caught up, like Yamaha with the R1 and, of course, the Fireblade. But Suzuki turned the tide in 2005 with their all-new Gixxer 1000 K5. And Choi Corsa, and in its inaugural year, won the World Superbike title. But then it just sort of stagnated. You go back to 2005, 20 years later, their catalogue of bikes doesn't really look that much different. And despite winning the MotoGP title in 2020, they pulled out for good in 2022. And currently, Suzukis don't race in MotoGP, World Superbike, British Superbike, Moto America. I mean, all right, you might get a few privateers knocking about, but you know what I mean. And their 18.5 grand flagship model, the Gixxer 1000, hasn't had any significant updates for 8 years. And it looks archaic compared to the R1, the M1000 Honda Fireblade, and let alone the all-conquering Ducati Panigale. All my favourite Suzukis were inspired and engineered through their racing heritage, and that's one of the main reasons why I bought them. If the Suzuki bosses don't change their minds and return to racing, their bikes will age into anonymity. I mean, I know this sounds a bit far-fetched, but their racing heritage will continue to decline, and then it will become a sad page on Wikipedia, like the TT wins for Norton and Velocet. So this is a heartfelt message to Suzuki. Stop resting on your laurels and get back to what you do best and go racing. So what do you guys think? Do you think Suzuki should get back to racing? Please comment below and like and subscribe. Cheers.